What's good YouTube? This is Fresh Pair returning for another edition of Tech Focus, where I will nitpick and share my thoughts about the tech of a shoe. This isn't for everyone, you've been warned. For today, we will examine the traction pattern of the Nike Hyperdunk 2016 Flyknit. In case you missed my comprehensive performance review for this shoe, I gotcha. I already made one. If you don't know yet, check the links below. Also, please subscribe to my YouTube channel because there will be more. Give this video a thumbs up while you're at it. Follow me on Instagram and go check my website for more info. With that said, let's get in focus. Herringbone pattern has been used on the outsole of basketball shoes for a long time. For example, the Adidas Pro model already had it back in 1965, so no doubt, herringbone is perhaps the most tried and tested traction patterns, which is why it is still used to this day. But things change. There have been many cases in recent years where traditional herringbone pattern has been altered. This is why you often hear adjectives such as modified, evolved, and aggressive, among many others, to describe the redesign of herringbone. Of course, of equal importance for court grip is the rubber compound used for the outsole. Now let me say this right now, rubber compound definitely plays a big role, but I will leave that out for the moment and talk about it in more detail in a separate tech focus segment. For now, let's focus on the traction pattern alone, specifically the traction pattern in the Nike Hyperdunk 2016 Flyknit. The Hyperdunk 2016 Flyknit uses what Nike calls aggressive herringbone. Now, unlike traditional herringbone, the pattern here mainly consists of individual lines that do not intersect or touch at any point. The lines are also quite lengthy, which means that there are fewer angles. Now here's the thing, the rubber threads or lines here slightly slant either inwards or towards the back of the shoe. Now the threads are also pliable. To be specific, the threads at the forefoot near the medial bend further inwards during forward stops or skids. The threads along the length of the lateral bend further inwards during lateral stops. Meanwhile, the threads along the length of the medial also bend further inwards during medial stops. Also note the cord out or hollow sections of the outsole. They can also affect traction, but again, I'll discuss it in another segment of Tech Focus. Let's just leave it at that for now. Going back, the result of the partial inward slant of the rubber threads is that it gives more floor coverage for each normal step. This is because the rubber threads bend almost parallel to the floor each time your foot lands on the floor. Now, since the rubber threads are also very pliable, they easily bend. In other words, when pressure is applied during specific footsteps, the natural tendency of a given section of the threads is to bend further down. By way of example, imagine the bristles of a brush that partially slant towards the back by default. Press down and the bristles further bend almost parallel to the surface. Now, apart from the tip of the bristles, part of the length of each bristle also brushes the surface. This gives it more surface coverage. On really clean courts, the traction pattern does its job excellently. The same is true for basic forward running motions, but that is not our concern here. After all, it is not every day that we get to play on really clean floors where almost every type of traction pattern works well, and basketball involves different kinds of footwork. Having said that, the traction pattern on the Nike Hyperdunk 2016 Flyknit is not so much of a good thing on moderately dusty courts, although it's also not horrendous. Emphasis on moderately dusty courts. In my opinion, there is one main reason for the reduced court grip. The traction pattern has reduced resistance against the force coming from quick changes of direction. Here's why. What you need here is for the threads to sort of dig into the floor during contact. It won't happen if the threads bend almost parallel to the floor due to the pliability and the angle of slanting. Stated differently, the threads will have more floor resistance if they are bent towards the direction of a given foot motion. For example, for forward skids or stops, the threads at the forefoot should bend towards the front. For lateral skids or stops, the threads at the lateral should also bend towards the lateral or the outside of the shoe, not inwards. The key here is resistance to force in order to have increased abrasion. What I'm trying to say here is that the treads should push off against the floor. However, the direction of the slant here does the opposite when stopping or skidding. It makes the treads bend with the floor and not against it. The partial inward slanting also tends to give dust more room to cover. This is because when the treads are further bent, more surface area brushes with the floor. With reduced floor resistance and more dust stuck on the treads, the effect is some slight delay before the traction bites the floor, especially on hard cuts, forward skids, sudden stops, and crossovers. The squeak is also reduced if not muted. That was my experience on moderately dusty courts. It was not really frustrating, it was just a bit of a letdown. Now somehow I kind of wish that Nike would use the traction pattern in the 2013 version again. That one had really excellent court grip even on moderately dusty courts. One last thing, I've played in my pair for more than 20 hours now, so I think that break-in time for the traction is already out of the equation. This one's already broken in nicely. And again, rubber compound is also a big factor, but we will talk about it in another Tech Focus segment, so stay tuned. If only all courts are clean, the traction here would be consistent and awesome. Unfortunately, not all courts are created equal, which is why a traction pattern that works on one court may be a little below average on another. I just wish that the rubber treads on this shoe are rigid. That would have been helpful at least. That is it for today's Tech Focus. Let me know your thoughts, post them up in the comment section. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, give this video a thumbs up, follow me on Instagram, check my website, watch my performance review for the Hyperdunk 2016 Flyknit. All the links are posted below. This is Fresh Pair signing out for today. Thanks for watching. Peace.